All right, so today let's jump into a story that's, well, it's got more twists and turns than your typical political drama. We're talking about Trump's pick for Attorney General.
Yeah, it's a really it's an interesting look at how loyalty can play a role,
Yeah.
especially in a second term.
Right, and we're going off this article from the Associated Press. It's called Trump Chooses Loyalist Pam Bondi for Attorney General Pick After Matt Gaetz Withdraws. And it's a pretty fascinating look into how these things work,
Yeah.
you know, like the inner workings of these appointments and what it could mean for the Department of Justice.
And for you, what's interesting is that this whole thing kind of raises questions
Yeah.
about how these appointments happen and whether the DOJ can really stay independent.
Yeah, for sure.
Uh,
So the story starts with the initial nominee, Matt Gaetz, former Florida congressman, big Trump supporter, but not really who you'd think of for Attorney General, right?
yeah, he's a lawyer, but
Yeah.
compared to past attorneys general, his experience is, well, it's pretty limited.
And right away, it was overshadowed by, well, there were those allegations of sex trafficking against Gaetz,
Yeah.
which he denies strongly, of course.
Yeah, that definitely became a big distraction.
Yeah.
There were a lot of doubts about whether the Senate would even confirm him.
And that's what led to the withdrawal, and then this pivot to Pam Bondi.
Yeah.
Gaetz stepped aside, saying he didn't want to be a distraction.
Yeah, which isn't that surprising, really, under the circumstances. But then things get interesting because Trump announces Pam Bondi, the former Florida Attorney General, is the new nominee.
And she's a totally different story than Gaetz, isn't she?
Huh.
Years of legal experience, history in public office, and a very close relationship with Trump.
Right, she was even one of his lawyers during the first impeachment and a strong supporter during the recent trial regarding, but we don't need to get into all that. The
Right.
point is she's very much a known entity in Trump's inner circle.
And of course, Trump himself posted about it, praising Bondi and saying he wants to refocus the DOJ on fighting crime and, making America safe again. His words.
Which brings up the big question, right? What does it mean for the Justice Department to have? Well, someone so closely aligned with the president at the helm.
Yeah, that's what everyone's wondering. I mean, Bondi brings a very different kind of experience than Gaetz.
For sure. She's been in the legal world a long time and knows how to navigate the complexities of government.
But because she's so close to Trump, it raises those concerns about conflicts of interest, doesn't it?
It does. There are questions about how she handled that Trump University investigation back when she was Florida's attorney
Well,
general.
Trump University, that seems to come up everywhere. And then there were those allegations of bribery against Bondi, stemming from a campaign contribution from Trump, which she denied, of course. But it definitely adds another layer of scrutiny to this whole thing.
And then there's that incident where she had to publicly apologize for asking to delay an execution so she could have a campaign fundraiser. All these past controversies are bound to come up again during the confirmation process.
Yeah, it seems like everyone in this political drama has their own baggage. But Gaetz withdrawing actually did something else, too. It kind of shined a spotlight on other nominees Trump has put forward. Some of them pretty controversial.
Yeah, it makes you wonder about Trump's vetting process for these positions. It seems like maybe loyalty is more important than thoroughly checking someone's background.
Yeah, like with Pete Hegseth, the pick for the Pentagon. He's facing allegations of sexual assault, too, which he denies.
It's a pattern that's hard to ignore, and all of this is happening as Trump is coming back into the Oval Office, which could mean we're in for even more unconventional decisions.
So for the average person, what does all this mean? I mean, picking an attorney general is never simple. But this really shows how the president has to balance things like loyalty, experience, avoiding conflicts of interest.
And this is just the tip of the iceberg. Pam Bondi is about to step into a Justice Department that's facing all these high-profile investigations and is trying to navigate a very divided political climate. It's a lot to take in, and the implications are huge.
It really makes you think about how this might shape the future of justice in America and what it means for the career prosecutors in the DOJ.
Yeah, it really does feel like we're watching a live test of how well our justice system can handle political pressure,
And the stakes are so high, too. The Attorney General oversees the whole Department of Justice, right? The FBI, federal law enforcement, all of it.
It's a position with a huge amount of power. They're responsible for upholding the rule of law and making sure everyone's treated equally.
But with Bondi being so close to Trump, it makes you wonder if she can really be independent.
That's the big question, right? Her past actions, those questions about the Trump University thing and the campaign contribution controversy, it does make you wonder if she can really separate herself from all that.
And Trump has tried to influence the DOJ before, hasn't he? to go after his opponents or drop cases against his allies.
Right, and that sets a dangerous precedent. It creates this uncertainty. If people think the justice system is being manipulated for political gain, it undermines trust in one of the most important parts of our democracy.
That's a really good point. It makes you wonder how the career prosecutors in the DOJ are feeling about all this.
Yeah, they're in a tough spot. Their whole careers are about upholding the law, and now their leader is someone who hasn't always followed the same principles.
So how do we make sense of all this? This is uncharted territory, isn't it? Where do we even go from here?
Well, this is where it's so important to be informed and engaged. People need to understand what's going on, hold their elected officials accountable, and demand transparency and fairness from the justice system.
So it's about staying informed, asking questions,
Mm.
and not just accepting things at face value.
The decisions being made today have consequences down the line. The future of the Justice Department and maybe even American democracy as a whole, it's all being influenced by these choices.
So it's bigger than just this one nomination.
Yeah.
This is about the core principles of our nation.
It's a story that's still unfolding. We need to pay attention, have these discussions, and make our voices heard.
Because at the end of the day, protecting the integrity of our justice system is everyone's responsibility, not just those in power.
This is a moment where we need to be paying attention, thinking critically, and really standing up for justice and equality. It's a lot to ask, but the alternative is much worse.
This whole thing really shows that democracy isn't a spectator sport. It needs participation, informed engagement, and the courage to stand up for what you believe in.
It's a journey, not a destination. We need to be vigilant, committed to the truth, and willing to challenge those who try to undermine our democracy.
It's a lot to think about for sure. This deep dive has really shown me how complex these issues are,
Yeah.
and how important it is to stay engaged.
And remember, this conversation isn't over. This is just the beginning of a new chapter in American politics, and we all have a role to play in shaping what it looks like.
This whole situation with the Attorney General, it really highlights how the president's personal loyalties can affect important institutions. But it also shows how important it is for us to stay informed and involved. We can't just sit back and watch this happen. We have to participate.
It really does feel like we're watching a political drama play out in real time, doesn't it? Where the lines between loyalty, ambition, and justice get all blurred.
Yeah, it really does. And it brings up a big point. We can't just be passive observers here. We have to stay involved and informed, especially when it comes to these big appointments.
Exactly. It's not enough to just glance at the headlines. We have to dig deeper, understand the details, and think about what these decisions will mean in the long run.
Right, because the choices made today have consequences down the road. They shape the future of American justice for years to come.
It's like steering a ship, you know? A small change in direction now could lead to a completely different destination.
This whole thing with Gates and then switching to Bondi so quickly, even though their backgrounds are so different, it really makes you wonder what's going on in Trump's head. What's driving these decisions?
Yeah, definitely. It does seem like loyalty is a big factor for this administration. Maybe even more important than experience sometimes.
Which brings us back to that main question. What kind of attorney general will Pam Bondi be? Will she put Trump's agenda first? Or will she fight to keep the Justice Department independent and impartial?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Only time will tell. But you know, one thing's for sure, everything she does is going to be watched very closely by both sides.
And we can't forget this is just one part of a bigger story. Trump has made other controversial appointments too, each one raising its own set of questions.
It's important to remember that the Justice Department plays a vital role in protecting our democracy, you know? They investigate corruption, protect civil rights, make sure everyone's treated equally under the law, no matter their political beliefs.
If people lose faith in the Justice Department,
Mhm.
that could be really bad.
It would damage trust in our institutions and weaken the whole foundation of our legal system.
That's why these deep dives are so important. They give you the knowledge and context you need to make informed decisions and have real conversations about where our country is headed.
So as we wrap up this episode, I want you to remember this. Democracy isn't a spectator sport. It takes active participation, staying informed, and speaking up for what you believe in.
Well said.
Yeah,
The story doesn't end here, though.
it doesn't. This is just the beginning of a new chapter, and we're all writing it together. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.